Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Conservative motion for this debate is deliberately blurring and distorting 4 different things, and I assert that they are doing so deliberately as part of their campaign against the acceptance and safety of trans people. I'll unpick them for you. The first is the matter of women's rights. The fight for women's rights is a fight for equality, the right to fully participate in life, which is part of a larger struggle for every human to have their rights respected. There are no special rights associated with one sex. Secondly, they confuse a question of architecture with one of ideology. I am very confident that every member in the chamber opposite has in their own home toilets that are used by both men and women. There's no fundamental problem with this. It is possible.
Let's hear Ms Slater. Members, let's be courteous. Let's hear Ms Slater. It is possible
to design toilets that are functional, offer privacy, and which can be used by people of different sexes and genders. If a room is badly designed, the correct solution is to redesign the room, not ban people from it. Thirdly, the Conservative motion specifically uses the words biological woman, which signposts us to their real incentive here, which is their discomfort around the existence of trans people. Well, I've got bad news for them. Trans people exist. Certainly, I'll take an intervention.
I'm very grateful to Lorna Slate for taking the intervention. I think just to assess what my position is, I think rights are available to everybody, and we believe that everybody should be able to live their own lives. However, does she not accept there are circumstances where biology matters, and things like healthcare and things like sport? And what does she think about, for example, at the Olympics when we saw biological males punching women in the face? Is that where we are?
Lorna Slater.
Brian Whittle will, of course, I'm sure, have read very carefully the Equalities Act before he made an intervention of this kind, and therefore he will know that within the Equalities Act there exist places where exemptions are allowed, for example, within sporting, within medical care, within prison service environments. Those exceptions exist, but out with those exceptions, we do not allow discrimination against people where there isn't a really good reason. But I'm sure Brian Whittle's read the Equalities Act, so he'll know that those exemptions exist, and I do support the provisions in the Equality Act. Trans people using our facilities is not a new thing. Trans people have existed all along. They've been using our toilets all along. And the Equalities Act does not allow you to discriminate against people just because you don't like them. A trans person correctly using public facilities is causing no one any harm. Fourthly and finally, the most pernicious words in the Conservative motion around jeopardising safety, dignity and privacy, and referring to horrific incidents of sexual abuse and harassment. The Tories, although they couldn't give a single example, want us to get us all to associate in our minds the existence of trans people with dangerous crimes, crimes that have been committed by men, not by trans people. Jackie Bailey, or certainly Murdo Fraser.
Murdo Fraser.
Well, I've asked to give an example. Let me give one specific example from the area I represent. Katie Dolotowski, back in 2018, a trans woman was caught and convicted in the Asda toilets in Kirkcaldy of filming children and then assaulted a 10-year-old girl in the toilets, the female toilets of the Morrisons in Kirkcaldy. That's just one example of many.
Lorna Slater.
Yeah, well, we asked for examples.
Can I have Ms Slater's microphone? Thank you.
That is a horrendous example. Murdo Fraser is right to highlight that example. I want to highlight an example in my own life where I have a sister who was assaulted by a man in a women's toilet because he just walked right in. We don't stop people from going into toilets. What I want to highlight, of course, is that within this debate this afternoon, for example, Jackie Bailey listed a lot of sexual and horrific crimes, but she didn't even pretend to claim that they were committed by trans people. She just listed them out, so to make us worried. Pam Gosel gave the evidence of boys behaving, I need to make some progress now, boys behaving badly as a reason to discriminate against trans people. We can't discriminate against a whole class of people because boys behave badly in school. Rachel Hamilton also listed a whole bunch of horrific crimes, none of which would have been prevented by stopping trans people from using the toilet. That is a hateful thing to do, to associate the crimes of people who haven't committed them with a whole group of people. Trans people are not associated anywhere or in any way with increased risks or dangers to women and girls. There is no evidence anywhere in the world, including in places where self-ID laws exist, that policies that allow trans people to access single-sex spaces and their services in line with their lived sex increase harm to others. None at all, not a shred. Quite the opposite. There is evidence that not allowing trans people to access these spaces increases the harm that they face. I wouldn't subject a young trans woman to having to change in a men's locker room. It simply wouldn't be safe for her. It's more likely that trans people just end up not being able to participate in normal activities at all. Exercise, socialising, and all the things that every human needs to thrive. It is not okay to discriminate against people who have done
conclude, Ms. Slater.
Thank you. No harm. I am so sorry, not only that the Conservatives have been mansplaining women's rights to us, but they
conclude,
like
Ms. Slater.
They want
Thank you, Ms. Slater.
Thank you.
You must conclude.